Our third question will be answered by Tom Bonchek, William McKinney, and Joanne Flatley. And that question is, superintendents and school committees are requesting increased reimbursement to school districts for the cost associated with special education. What would you suggest to decrease the gap between the cost associated with special needs and the funding the state allocates? Mr. Bonchek, you're first.
This is a tough question, but we do need to have special education out there. Formula of mine would be to go out on a whim and train people in these special education instructor courses so that we can open up a regional facility or a local facility where these students don't have to be transported around all over the place, costing much taxpayers' dollars in transportation and schooling them. If we have a general base of teachers that are trained by our state colleges where we can send these people and decrease the cost, I'd be all for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like me to read it again, Mr. McKinney? Please. Superintendents and school committees are requesting increased reimbursements to school districts for the costs associated with special education. What would you suggest to decrease the gap between the cost associated with special needs and the funding the state allocates?
Well, as with everything that the state budget entails, I think we basically have to look at the entire budget. And as the MDC commissioner, we had about a $45 million budget that we had to deal with. When I took over, we were in the midst of a recession. We had to, what they called 9C cuts, which was money that we were expecting to be able to spend through the fiscal year was suddenly taken away during the year, and we had to deal with some cuts. And basically, it forced us to look at everything we were doing and how we were spending the money and making sure, was it the best investment? Special education money, other monies that the cities and towns need, local aid, everything's important. Everyone wants to get a piece of the pie, and this zero-based budgeting would really force all of the agencies and would force all of the people involved in the process to look at their budget and say, are we really getting the most for our money? Is the program that we're offering the best it can be? Is it something that can be combined with another program within another agency? An example was the possible merging of the Turnpike Authority and Mass Highway. I mean, not to get away from the special education question, but just to show that there are monies that can be saved within the state budget that can be used for something as important as education.
Thank you. Joanne, again the question, superintendents and school committees are requesting increased reimbursement for costs associated with special education. What would you suggest to decrease the gap between the costs associated with special needs and the funding the state allocates?
Well, as a current member of the Dedham School Committee, I feel very strongly about special education funding. I do believe that before the legislature now are laws that will address the issue of special education transportation so that it will be included in the circuit breaker reimbursement, which is money which comes from the state, which reimburses the district for this mandate of the IDEA law, which is what provides for the special education. Also, I do believe that the circuit breaker should be fully funded. The law provides a 78% reimbursement for special education costs that the district expends. At this time, it has never been funded up to 78%, and the districts have been making up the difference. I believe that if we do both of those things, as well as put more money into teacher training for the appropriate kind of training, there will be less overall out-of-district costs in our district for the special education students. And one point that I would like to make is that I think that the IDEA law, which is the law that provides for special education, is the right thing to do. And I think that the law currently is pitting the districts and the state because it's unfunded, and that we need to look at the funding mechanism so that we can do the right thing and fund it at the same time.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our second round of questions now. This first question will be answered first by Stephen Villaffer and then Paul McMurtry. And that question is, I'm sorry? I have a one besides Stephen's name here, and the two beside Paul's. Last time it was Stephen and then Paul. You're going to get me in trouble with Betty. I'm following Betty's notes here. Okay, I guess we'll stay with the order that you're seated, I guess. What's your recommendation, Demetra, that we? Okay. The question is, if there were proposed legislation supporting an increase in our income tax dedicated to education, would you support this increase? If so, why and at what percentage? If not, why not?
Well, thank you. I am not a proponent of increased income tax. However, I do think we need to be more creative and find more creative ways to educate our children and to think outside the box. We have to reach to the elected officials, our school districts, to somehow find a way that we can get the message across or educate our students in the district without having to increase an income tax. It's a balance where, again, if there's some efficiency in government, looking at the budget, I'm hopeful that we can find areas where funds can be put into education, both public and private. I truly believe that a solid foundation in education can prevent a lot of future problems. If you focus on your youth through education and proper funding, then it has a multiplier effect throughout the community. So I would not be a proponent of an increased income tax. I would be a proponent of finding alternative, creative methods of getting funds and supplying the resources to our educators so they can get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Billford, the question again, if there were proposed legislation supporting an increase in our income tax, if it was dedicated to education, would you support this increase? If so, why and at what percentage? And if not, why not?
As strong as a supporter as I am of education, I would not support at this time increasing the income tax. One of the things that's going on right now in terms of the government's relationship with the public is a lot of people don't think that that government listens to them. Now, there was a vote to decrease the income tax. I believe that should be done when the state can afford it. So I don't think we could realistically go back to the voters right now and ask for an increase for the income tax, even for something as worthy as education. Now, as I said before, it's how you divide the pie. And I think what we need to do is set our priorities and make education a priority. One of the things I would do immediately is propose legislation. Dedham and Westwood are what's called minimum aid communities, which means that they're getting $50 per pupil in Chapter 70 money over what they got last year. I would propose right away that minimum aid be increased for all minimum aid communities from $50 to $100. Now, that isn't a lot, and it's probably a Band-Aid solution right now for our needs in terms of education, but it's a start. And I also think it would benefit a majority of the school districts in the state, which is something that you could sell to the rest of my members. And then you go to work on fixing the foundation formula, which absolutely positively does not reflect what it costs to educate a child these days. So my answer is no to raising the income tax, but yes to increase funding within the current state budget.
Thank you.